What is going on, guys? Bingo here. I'm with the Duel Factory for another episode of X2 Drop. This is our Yu-Gi-Oh podcast we do every week talking about something in the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game. Could be news, could be product, could be how we're feeling. And this week we're going to be kind of bouncing around a couple of smaller topics, but it should be a pretty interesting discussion. But before we get into that, if you want to put your input in what we talk about out there for us to hear, where we got all of these suggestions is the Discord. So we're going to be moderating that, taking some suggestions every couple of weeks so that you guys get to hear what you want to hear. So the links is in every description wherever you're watching this. It's down there somewhere, as well as the Duel Factory has been consistently uploading some pretty interesting Yu-Gi-Oh content. So it's youtube.com/the Duel Factory to check him out. And then, Joe, you got any plugs you want to get in at the beginning?
I like pie.
Well, that's irrelevant, so I appreciate it. So for anyone listening, this week we're going to be talking about a few things. And like I said, these are from our Discord members that wanted to have these talked about because right now is kind of a lull in Yu-Gi-Oh! We did just have the format shake up a teeny tiny bit because of a small ban list, but not much is going on. Products kind of slowly coming out, but nothing right this second. There's obviously no big events going on. Nothing really to talk about. So, Joe, the first part is how are you feeling about the game?
Compared to the last format, I know a lot of people don't think it's a huge improvement, but I do personally. Mainly because, I actually get to play in my games, which is huge, by the way. That being said, even though I think it's a huge format change, the decks still feel like the same ones are still the best decks. So I think Dragon Link's overwhelmingly the best deck. And then Dino Resurged, which is very upsetting, by the way. But that deck came back. And then you have some other ones. I thought the Tri Brigade Lyralist deck would be more popular than it is right now, but it's not at the moment. And then Shadal. God, that deck looks so good. Especially past LCS.
So are you excited to play? Are you excited to deck build? Or are you just kind of sticking with what you have and just kind of go into locals? Or where's your mindset right now? Because you're probably, I don't have to say probably, you're the most committed to this game out of our little group we got going on. So as far as a hardcore player, are you excited for the game right now?
For the game, okay, so the game as a whole, I think right now it's kind of at a standstill. Yes, we have a new ban list. Deck building is actually a really golden point for Yu-Gi-Oh right now because I've seen a lot of people playing a lot of rogue decks too on streams, which is really exciting. We were talking about Prank Kids a little bit earlier. The problem is we still have all these new toys to play with, and we have nowhere to go play. There's the remote dual invitationals and stuff like that, but it's still the same thing as last year. We just don't have anywhere to play.
Yeah,
and that's the biggest.
That's the biggest issue for everybody for the past year, because what good is a physical card game that doesn't have an online counterpart? It's really, really hard to stay motivated to play this game. We've talked about this several times, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. So for anybody that doesn't know, I just moved back over to California, and it's pretty severe as far as the restrictions and what's allowed and what's not allowed right now. So it's still very frustrating because at least in Illinois, if I wanted to go to locals, I could, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And not having a sanctioned online platform is kind of grinding my gears the wrong way. I know there's speculation that they're working on something, but right now I'm not really too big on this scene right now. I will sit down, I'll chill with you guys, I'll watch matches, I'll talk shit, I'll throw a theory out there, but I'm not sitting here for a couple hours a day thinking about the game.
Oh, no, for sure. Now, what I will say about the overall situation, especially now that the vaccine after COVID's become like more and more like accessible, it is getting better in some areas that I've noticed just by simply reading articles and stuff like that. Some places are actually starting to open like their local game stores back up. Now, obviously, for you, I would imagine like it's super though, right? Because California like is probably one of the best places to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it's probably one of the most active, and right now you just can't do anything. But it looks like it might start getting better here soon. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I just have a feeling California will be at the very end of the transition back into relatively normal life. It's just how they do things are an ass-backward state.
Let me ask you this. Whenever the world actually goes back to normal, are you excited to actually go play regionals down in California? Because they're like 500-600 man regionals. They're huge. They're like small YCSs.
I'm actually very excited to see what the scene is like over here, because I've been in the Midwest since I got back into the game, and it's fun and all, but it's not nearly the same. Like Rosemont's probably the biggest event that we have, and that one did cap out at 500. I think it was 2018 or
2019, the last time we all went to an event.
Yeah, so, but yeah, I mean, right now, if I could go out and play, I think the format, because I haven't been hands-on with it, it's actually pretty exciting for me. I could see how it's stale because, it's the same couple of decks that have been relevant for months now, but I don't have that much play time in the field, so I would be excited. VFD is a good card to be gone. You can play pretty much whatever you want. You might not do the best, but that's a good sign of a format, right? Where you confidently can play a rogue deck and have relative success.
And I think that's the biggest difference in this current format that we had in past formats, is like you can actually be more successful with less meta relevant strategies. That's a big improvement, especially with some of the back cards gone now. It also brings up another interesting point, because we haven't had actual physical card games, and the closest thing we've had is Remote Duel. But we're still pumping out ban lists, and we've had no events.
Yeah.
So imagine how drastically different the game would be if we still had events, and how different our list would look.
Yeah, I mean, this list personally, I feel like would have been a lot more impactful because they would have had more data. People would have been way more up in arms about, Eldritch or whatever decks have been around a while.
Trash, by the way. I just want to get that out there.
Yeah, we all know how you feel about Eldritch. But okay, so that's our views on the game right now. It's a good format, right? I think it is a very good format, but the ability to play is still limited, just like it's always been for the past year. The first Discord topic I do want to get into kind of goes with something we were talking about in that last little bit, is updating old decks to play in the current game climate. Right, this is one of our favorite things to do because we can't let go of the past. We have our favorite decks. We're always going to try to be doing something. But Joe, I think you've been primarily focused on building either new decks or rogue decks that are relatively new. I guess. So we've talked about this a few times on the podcast. Building a rogue deck or an old deck, depending on how you phrase it, you have to have a specific thought process in mind, right? I'm going to let Joe talk about it a little bit because I feel like I'm going to get on a soapbox here.
Oh, you don't want to be on a soapbox?
No, I do. I just don't want you to sit there for 10 minutes before.
Fair enough. I mean, it's a classic thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! Older strategies being able to adapt to the future and stuff like that. So, for example, I mess with it from time to time, not as much as I had been in the past couple of weeks, but Thunder Dragon's always going to be one of those decks I mess with. Deck does one thing very well. It does put up big monsters very well, so you have to find a way to basically take advantage of that, right? And the benefit of that deck, it has 1-2 card combos. And then the nice thing, too, is that deck becomes a little bit more playable this format, like I said, because cards like Calamities are gone, so all my monster effects can resolve, especially going second, which is huge. And then you have other decks, like what is it? One of them I was been watching, like I said, because I watch a lot of pack streams, and he's been playing a lot of prank kids, like a huge amount of prank kids. And like I said, it's the same thing. Like you can actually play the deck now, this format, because you're not getting stopped by everything. And then I remember one of the popular builds before the format changed was Mystic Mine being played in the deck, and now he's not playing it at all. He's just playing basically like, I think it's like 11. Well, hold on. If I remember his list right, it's 3 of the field spell and then 11 prank kids monsters themselves. I don't know if he's playing Terraform or not, but that's 14 starter cards. And then instead of playing like cards like Mystic Mine and stuff like that, to play like plays with like Bow Wow Bark or stuff like that, he's playing just high impact hand traps. Like there's no low impact hand traps in there. Like there's no Ash Blossom or anything like that.
Gamma Nib.
Yeah, like it's that. Gamma Nib, and surprisingly a card that's been seeing play in the main deck that I've seen it really good against a lot of decks is like Artifact Lancia, right? And it's perfect in a rogue strategy like Prank Kids that doesn't have like very like minimal engine requirements, and it can afford to play high impact hand traps like that because it doesn't hurt the strategy. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it turns off your Meow Meow Mew, but whatever.
Yeah, the grave effect. That's fine. So, when you're trying to pick an old deck, right? The guy who posted this is a returning player, and that's if you've ever been in that situation where you are a returning player to the game, you always want to find something that you're comfortable with, or at least we're at like a starting point that you understand the basic fundamentals of the strategy. There might be new cards, you still have to learn the meta, the staples, but at least you know what these 20 cards do. All right, you got to start there. And when you are in that position, you're a new player coming in, don't be afraid to look at other people's lists, right? This isn't 2003 where there's minimal internet access and like it's a very small niche and you just have to like go through your bulk and find cool cards that you got. It's not 2003. So you need to just look at somebody else's list, see how they're playing it. Look at 5 people's list, 10 people's list. Like I remember when I was building Dark Magician in 2019, when I was like really trying to make the deck work, I was like looking at every list I could find just to see if they thought of something I didn't. And that's you just got to get your mind wrapped around the strategy and understand how it works, what its downsides are, and that is the biggest part is understanding what the deck sucks at, because it's a casual deck or a rogue deck for a reason, right? It sucks at something.
Oh, I guarantee you, because I was guilty of this when I first started playing, when I got back into the game. A lot of things that people will do is like they'll remember their deck doing a very specific thing. So let's use Lightsworn for an example, right? Because this is probably the deck that's gone through the most evolution. Lightsworn was notorious for what? Just dropping JD, nuking the board, right? Yep. Classic Lightsworn. Now, let's take a player that, we'll say they played the game in 2010 and they quit, all right? Now let's put them in the year 2021. They're going to try doing that same strategy because they just remembered that's what the deck did. No research, no no analyzing like current cards or anything like that. They're just going to go play their sweet 2010 Lightsworn deck, and they're probably going to get smacked around. And that's what people don't realize, because like now think about it, like what are the only cards in Lightsworn we play? Like Charge the Light Brigade, maybe Solar Recharge,
Raiden, Wolf, Lumina. And that's like a dedicated light. Like if you're playing like Lightsworn Mill or like not non-chaos, like, oh man, you're a madman.
Yeah, but like think about it too. Like it's crazy to think like that card used to define a format, and we have more access to it than we ever had.
Yeah, you got Safer, Chaos Space.
And the card's just borderline unplayable. But that's what I'm like trying to get at. Like people like hold on to the past and like, bro, they're like, this isn't what your deck can do anymore. Like you have to adapt.
But like I said, that's their comfort zone, and like maybe you need to play with a couple of games with that deck to understand like, okay, this does suck. Like, how do I fix it? And because of the situation we're in that we talked about earlier, you're probably primarily going to be playing online. And what do you have when you play online? Access to literally everything. So you don't need to spend $100+ per card on a set of staples. You don't need to track down 3 copies of Safer at your locals. Like, you just plug it into your deck and see how it works. And that's the biggest thing, right? It's just understand the problems with your deck, what you're trying to do. And if you're not 100% competitively focused mindset, like, that's fine, right? But just try to just keep building towards that. Like, if you think this one spice card's really fun and you like it in your deck, fuck it. I don't care if you play it. But eventually, you know, if you do get into the game enough, you're going to want to maximize your win percentage, and understanding that a giant power play but a loss of 20% consistency is not worth the payout, right? But that's for them to learn, right? I'm not here to change somebody's mind. I'm just giving information.
Well, another thing I will say, and it kind of goes on the same topic, especially like people, because you said we have more access to deck lists, card databases, and anything than we ever had in the past, right? One thing I will say is just get over the stigma of net decking. If we sat down in a room with every Yu-Gi-Oh player in the goddamn world and we put all lists together, I guarantee you could find at least one similarity amongst all the deck lists. You know what that means? Everybody net decks. Get over it.
Yeah. Net decking is fine, right? Let's say you take first at a regional and you just 100% net decked it, and then you said you came up with it. Like, everyone's going to know you're full of shit. But if you need a starting point, or you're like me and you just don't have the time to ground up, build, test, trial by fire deck build, just take somebody else's work and then play it. Okay, you don't like that they play 3 copies of this card. You're going to play 2 because you want to see it sometimes, but not all the time. Go from there, whatever. Make your changes, but at least it's a solid starting point that you agree with. All right. That's pretty much all I want to talk about on this topic. The next one, I'm pretty excited because it's a funny, or it can be taken in a fun direction. Benji over at Legacy Crusader said, when your opponent asks what your card does, deliberately under or over explaining it, is this something we do? How do we feel about it? So this can be taken in a lot of different directions, actually. Like, it's a very simple question, but you play shit all fusion, or you summon something on the field that has multiple effects, right? It's got an on summon, it's got an ignition, and it's got a grave trigger. Your opponent asks, what does it do? And you're in your head, you're like, I need X effect to resolve. Like, what do I do? And if you hate them, you can just deliberately leave out information, right? Or if you're like, this is my win condition, you know, it's going to be on him, and I don't want to be put in that position, so I'm just going to have him read the card. Like,
my wing withholding information. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever just looked at your hand and you're like, fuck, I need this to resolve?
I cannot tell you how many countless times I've looked at my hand like that.
A lot.
But
Go ahead.
It's just one of those days, right? Like, it just poses the questions, like, how do you judge, like, something like that? Like, I know, like, it's on the player to, like, read the card or something like that, or, like, both players to maintain the game state, but, like, how do you judge when one's intentionally withholding information and legitimately just doesn't realize what's going on? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just kind of weird. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. Sauceless, right? Just 1,000% guilty of it because he doesn't like other people, but whatever.
I mean,
Aaron's pure soul, so we'll leave him out of it.
My favorite example of when I'm explaining something is using the invoked engine, right? Because it's so simple, but it does so much, right? You normal summon Alistair. Your opponent says, what does that do? It adds my fusion spell. Did you withhold information? Do they not know what invocation does? Like, should you tell them what invocation does? No, that's stupid. But you activate invocation. They say, what is that? That's my fusion spell. Is that withholding information? Because it definitely does more than that.
Oh, it definitely does more than that. But at that certain point in time, that's what it is doing. So technically, you're not withholding. Now, if they ask you the question, what does this card do in its entirety? That's a different story.
Yeah, and then...
like,
oh, go ahead. I've been talking a lot.
Oh no, it's just it circles back to the same point. Like that's such a hard line to define, and like I get it, trust me, I do. But like at the same time, like
Yeah, and then I mean personally, if I'm like I don't really enjoy the person I'm playing against, what I do is I just turn the card around, have them read it. If they forget what it does, they don't know what cost is, they don't know what that you can use both effects of invocation in the same turn, that's on them, right? They read the fucking card. I'm going to move on with my day. Over explaining something is something in and of itself that's completely different, because providing a shit ton of irrelevant information just for the sake of it, you could be stalling for time, you could be just trying to make it seem like what you're trying to do is not a big deal. Like over explaining is something that is some people like to hear themselves talk, but I find myself, it's very hard to over explain unless I'm deliberately trying to just like take the attention away from something else.
See, I'm one of those players, like when I ask you what your card does, I'm not referring to every fucking interaction you could possibly think of. I'm referring to what it says on the text. If I ask you and then you start telling me certain game situations, I promise you, one, I'm going to be immediately pissed, and two, the rock bottom is coming expeditiously. But I mean, everyone's different. Like you said, some people just like to listen to themselves talk, and like you kind of open that box of worms whenever you're like, "Hey, what does your card do?" And your opponent's like, "I'm glad you asked."
Yeah, like they're playing some obscure rogue deck, or like they feel good because they're playing Yangzing Metal Foes, and you're like, "Hey, what does that one do?" And they're like, "Oh, good. Now I can waste 45 seconds by telling you what this fucking Yangzing card does." But yeah, so under explaining is definitely a lot more common, definitely a lot more abusable. But you gotta, it's a give and take, right? There's due diligence on both people's parts to understand the game. If you want to know exactly what a card does, you need to read the card.
Or you can Nathan Bates the shit out of it.
Oh yeah, or you can just completely ignore what the card actually does or the restrictions and just do it till your opponent calls you out, because it's their responsibility to make sure you don't cheat with your own deck.
Bathinator 2021. Definitely his quote.
Yeah. So
100%.
I thought that was a fun one. Now this last one, hopefully we'll get some good stories out of, or just some insight. Good or proper trade etiquette. We've talked about this one before, and it's definitely different between locals, regionals, and like a YCS setting. Trading, everyone has their preferences. Everyone has an idea of how trading should go, right? So, Joe, when you approach a trade, or most likely somebody approaches you for a trade, because you usually just hold on to everything, right? What are your rules? I have a couple rules that go into trading. I want to know if you do.
I don't trade anymore. I just buy cards.
Yeah.
It's not. But anyway, no.
But like you open fucking 3 boxes of Dual Devastator, and you're like, I don't fucking need these ultras, right? I just wanted like X card, and you got a whole binder full of trade bait. Like, what are your rules for trading?
I mean, I don't know if I necessarily have rules for trading, but I do know, like, we have so much open access to God knows how many different card markets or stuff like that. Like, if you're going to sit there and you're going to, I mean, like, if you're unsure of something, like, don't be afraid to, like, actually look it up. We're not, like, we're all sitting here playing a child's trading card game, for one. It's not like you don't have time to look it up. But, this is one of those things that, like, one, please don't fucking just, like, you know how, like, people, like, when you're sitting there, like, oh, let me see what that card does, and they dig their fingernail into your card? Don't do that to my trade. Don't do that to my trade.
Trading is something that I don't do very often, and I only do it with extra cards or, like, pulls that I don't want. Like, I think the biggest trade I could think of is I pulled an Electromite at Rosemont, and I traded it for, like, 2 Alti Invos because that's what he wanted. And I'm like, I made sure he knew. It's like, I'm getting like $40 extra on this trade, right? And he's like, yeah, I just want the card because it just came out like that Friday. And I was like, okay, my rules with trading is if you want something from me, because most of the time I don't want anything from you, don't waste my fucking time. If we're trading penny stocks, I don't care if we're 35 cents off. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, this trade is $7.46 on my side, and you're only giving me $6.50. It's like, cool, I'm moving on because I don't give a fuck about a dollar. Right? Like, you wanted this shit from me.
The Yugi Jews, my favorite.
And like, that's what blows my mind. It's like, you wanted this card from me. Why are you wasting my fucking time? I don't know how many cards I've just given away, right? You got bulk packs, or you got supers that you have like 10 copies of, and somebody's like, hey, you want to trade? Like, I'm looking for that, and you're like, here, just fucking have it. Like, I've done that more than I've traded in the past year, for sure.
Oh, yeah. I think the only I guess this is a decent rule, because you mentioned earlier, because you said like you were trading Electromagnet for ulti invos, and you're like profiting $40 extra, right?
Yeah, and I made
an advocate of, as long as both parties are fully aware of what's going on, then that makes it okay. Because like, I'll straight watch people just like, yeah, can I do this for this? And they don't look it up or anything, and then the one guy is just 1,000% unaware of what's happening. That literally irks me. I will literally stop everything I'm doing. I've done it in the middle of matches. I'll sit there playing, and then I just overhear the conversation because I have dad ears for some reason, and it just bothers me so much that I'll stop and I'm like, he's Jewing you, right? Both parties need to be aware.
I don't know if it's because I'm a little bit older. I fucking hate scalpers, like people trying to Jew people out of some money, but it's not like, it's on both parties, right? Most people have a smartphone. I'm not going to get bent out of shape. I might think the guy who's doing it is scum, and I will probably never do business with them. But that's and that's where trading comes, like that trade etiquette comes into play, because to you and me, that's not okay behavior. But there's so many wannabe Yu-Gi-Oh vendors out there that just that's what gets them hard when they go out, right? That's what fucking turns them on. They want to get a good trade or like an insane value trade because they got to make a profit. Or I don't fucking know. It just pisses me off when they're gaining like 80. Trade oh my god!
Without scalping people, you know what I mean? Like that is a thing, and I think that's especially like where you see like the floor vendors, that where you start seeing the problem. And that's another thing I hate is floor vendors. That's why I don't like trading anymore, because like you get the people and they're like, they treat Yu-Gi-Oh like it's just nothing but a business. I'm like, bro.
Floor vendors are really annoying because like you ever have it where you don't even know the dude is working for one of the vendors. You just think he's like some dude that's interested in trading, and you're like, it's in between rounds. I got some time. Like, yeah, sure, go look through this, my trade binder, and he's just trying to he's like, value on this. And you're like, I don't fucking know, man. I got to look it up. And he's just trying to give you some bullshit offer that is 25, 50% lower than what it's worth. Like, that's what, like, floor vendors. I don't even bring trades to events anymore. Not that we have events.
No, I just quit bringing trades to events also. But like floor, when I was still trading like actively, like, floor vendors is my favorite because they come up to you and they offer you like 30 or 40% on your card. I would just close my binder and immediately walk away. Yeah. Like, no explanation, no nothing. I just pack my shit up and walk.
All right, guys. So, wait, you got one last thing, Joe?
No, that's it.
Okay. So this was this week's episode of X2 Drop. I hope you guys have enjoyed. We've talked about a few things today. If you do want your topic on the chopping block for a possible discussion, please join the Discord. We got it's a nice small community growing. If you want to duel somebody, talk about deck theory or whatever the heck you want to do, the link's down there in the description. And remember, check out the Duel Factory, youtube.com/the Duel Factory. And with that, I'll see you guys back here next week.
Before you dip.
What's up?
That was very good. No sauce.
Piccolo, you have no sauce. No, hey.
All right, I will see you guys back here, same time, same place next week, 8 a.m. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, 10 a.m. on YouTube. Oh, we're also on Pandora now. Cool. Peace out.
Okay, bye.